I'm Tanya Kane-Perry.
And I'm Wenzel Jones.
With NewsWrap, a summary of some of the news in or affecting LGBTQ communities around the world for the week ending February 6, 2021. The already unfriendly government of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan escalated its attacks on LGBTQ people this week. Erdogan led the assault during video conferences with his supporters on February 1st and 3rd. He vowed to carry our young people to the future, not as LGBT youth, but as the youth that existed in our nation's glorious past. Later, he even said, LGBT, there is no such thing. This country is moral, and it will walk to the future with these values. Turkey's Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu added fuel to the anti-queer fire by calling student demonstrators LGBT deviants. Protesters are raging at Istanbul's Boğaziçi University over Erdogan's appointment of his ally Melih as the university's rector. Soylu labeled the protesters terrorists, inciting hatred, for displaying artwork that included LGBTQ rainbows next to an image of a sacred Islamic site. 4 students were arrested for the artwork that the Istanbul governor's office called an ugly attack mocking religious beliefs.
There were also protests of Bulu's university appointment in Ankara. Police reportedly used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse protesters during continued demonstrations this week. More than 250 were detained in Istanbul and 69 in Ankara, according to Reuters. Critics call Bulu's appointment yet another example of Erdogan's drive to control all aspects of Turkish life. While the country has an ostensibly secular government, strict Islamic beliefs permeate the socially conservative country. In 2015, the government banned Istanbul's annual Pride celebrations that once drew tens of thousands.
Life in Poland got a little less repressive this week when a small town dropped its LGBT free zone designation. Officials in Nowa Deva withdrew their resolution opposing LGBT ideology. The southeastern town of some 11,000 people was among more than 100 local and regional governments to enact similar resolutions. The head of the local town council claimed that the council's intentions have been misunderstood and that the declaration was exploited to damage Nowa Deva's reputation. Officials in 2 other Polish towns rejected efforts last year to repeal similar LGBT free zone declarations. Leaders in Nowa Deva essentially bowed to foreign pressure. The Irish town of Fermoy ended their Twin Cities agreement because of the Polish city's anti-queer positions late last year. A few other Polish LGBT free zone localities have lost Twin Cities funding from European Union member states. Officials in the Carpathian mountain region of Podkarpacki are the latest losers. They forfeited the equivalent of more than $2 million in funding this week from the EU's Culture and Natural Heritage Project. The Polish federal government has promised to cover the EU funding losses of LGBT free zone municipalities.
Pressure is building on the government of Japan to enact basic LGBTQ anti-discrimination protections before the start of the Tokyo Summer Olympics. Officials insist the Games will go on later this year despite the COVID-19 pandemic. An open letter to Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga from 116 human rights and LGBTQ advocacy groups urges Japan's government to honor the Olympic Charter. It bans discrimination of any kind, including on the grounds of sexual orientation. The letter points out that, while the Tokyo Metropolitan Government adopted an ordinance that protects LGBT+ people from discrimination in 2018, several Olympic competitions will take place outside of Tokyo. The letter gives a warning that, without the government's action, LGBT+ fans, athletes, officials, and visitors will not be protected from discrimination. The pressure campaign for protections based on sexual orientation and gender identity began last year, even before the Games were postponed by the COVID-19 pandemic. They are now scheduled for July 23rd to August 8th. The open letter to the Prime Minister also asks supporters to sign a petition urging the Japanese government to act. You can find it at allout.org. It's co-sponsored by Human Rights Watch, Athlete Ally, and the Japan Alliance for LGBT Legislation.
Lawmakers in the Australian state of Victoria have approved a law banning conversion therapy. The measure passed the lower house of Parliament in December. It was approved in the upper house this week with bipartisan support after some 12 hours of debate. This prohibition on debunked treatments to change sexual orientation or gender identity includes what one might call teeth. It fines violators with up to $200,000 and up to 10 years in jail. Anyone who attempts to take a person outside the state for conversion therapy faces a jail term of up to 2 years. Anyone who advertises the so-called therapy can be fined up to $10,000. Several survivors of the medically discredited practice celebrated the bill's passage, but some conservative critics complained that it infringes on religious beliefs. Victoria Attorney General Jacqueline Symes countered those objections, saying that the legislation does not stop parents from talking to their kids about their views about sexuality or gender. This bill does not outlaw prayer. Once it's signed into law by the Victoria Governor for royal assent, it will take effect in 12 months. The Australian Capital Territory and the state of Queensland have also outlawed conversion therapy. LGBTQ activists and their allies are calling on the federal government to enact a bill to ban the practice nationwide.
The German theatrical world's closet doors burst open this week with 185 actors coming out en masse. Their manifesto, published in the national magazine Süddeutsche Zeitung, said that all too often, many of us have been cautioned, be it by managers, casting agents, colleagues, producers, editors, directors, etc., to keep quiet about our sexual orientation and gender identities to avoid jeopardizing our careers. The statement called for more queer characters on German screens. The actors also demanded that they not be typecast for coming out because we are actors. We don't have to be what we play. We act as though we were. That is our job. Two of the stars of the popular and long-running TV drama series Tatort were among the biggest names to come out in the manifesto. Eva Mechbach told the magazine that society is much wider and more diverse than the decision-makers think. Her co-star, Karen Kanjewski, explained that when we talk about it as a group, it suddenly became clear that this is how we could change something as a group, as a big group. The group is launching the Act Out campaign to encourage others in their industry to join their call for change and equal opportunities for LGBTQ actors.
Finally, country music's T.J. Osborne waited until he was 36 years old to come out publicly. The vocalist half of the best-selling Brothers Osborne did it in a lengthy interview this week in Time and elaborated during an appearance on The Ellen DeGeneres Show. That's one talk show host who knows a little something about coming out at the height of one's fame. A few close friends and family members have known about TJ's sexuality, but as for telling the world, he said,
"Through my insecurities, I've built it up to maybe be a bigger hurdle than it really was the whole time. The perfect time is always now, and I honestly, I instantaneously felt like I wish I had done this a long time ago."
While TJ Osborne joins other out country performers like Brandi Carlile, Lil Nas X, Orville Beck, Shelley Wright, and Billy Gilman, he's the first openly gay musician on a major country music label. The duo has released 7 top 40 country singles and 3 studio albums with EMI Records Nashville. Thinking about what lies ahead, TJ told DeGeneres,
I feel pretty confident going into places like LA and going to Chicago and playing here in Nashville where I live. And I'm curious to see how it all plays out with us going into rural America.
That's NewsWrap, Global Queer News with Attitude, for the week ending January 30th, 2021. Follow the news in your area and around the world. An informed community is a strong community.
NewsWrap is recording remotely during the COVID-19 emergency. It's written by Greg Gordon, edited by Lucia Chappelle, produced by Brian DeShazer, and brought to you by you.
Help keep us in ears around the world at thiswayout.org, where you can also read the text of this newscast and much more.
And you can listen to NewsWrap each week by subscribing to our This Way Out radio channel on YouTube. For This Way Out, I'm Tanya Kane Perry. Stay healthy.
And I'm Wenzel Jones. Stay safe.